disappointed in the way that I left, because for 2 years, as soon as Roy walked in the building after a week, he was like, "You're not going to play no more." I've still tried to put my finger on it to this day. I can't. And that's one of the things that bugs me. I can't really put a finger to as to why. And I can't go back on it, but it's one of them things that always daunts you. But what can you do? I found out I was leaving when Danny said to me, "Oh, they want to say a farewell." So like all these, regardless, this is where I say to you, football's a bit cutthroat. Regardless of what you've done at a football club, it all gets washed away and forgotten about in a split second. Brilliant. You always knew when you come in the building that he was going to go on to bigger and better. You knew that straight away. Just tactically, you knew so many different things. I'll tell you what, though, you need 2 hearts for him and 2 sets of lungs. Look, I would never want him to leave Palace, from a fan point of view and the legacy he could build there. But from a personal point of view, it's going to come a point as a footballer, you're going to look at it and think, I want to play European football.
Yeah, so we just want to kick things off like here and now. Obviously, you're playing in Cyprus. So yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's good. It took a little time to, I'd probably say, adapted. It's completely different. Off the field, it's been brilliant, but in terms of the football club structure and stuff like that, what you're used to is completely different. It's not got the same infrastructure, obviously, as England, but I knew that coming. So it's sort of been a tale of 2 seasons last season for me. The first part was very bad. The second part I was injured, and then we had coronavirus. And then this season, it's been really good with the football. The football club's still pushing to try and get into those Europe places. We've got the chance to do it now, so we need to keep pushing.
Yeah, so why Cyprus? Like when you left Crystal Palace, there's clubs in Europe, there's Turkey, there's the United Arab Emirates that a lot of players go to. So why Cyprus in particularly?
If you want me to be honest, I looked at a lot of things for my family. Football is, I don't want to say, it's just, sometimes it's a selfish sport in terms of you always trying to do what you feel is right for yourself, because obviously it's you playing football, which is correct. I got a stage to my career where I was thinking about my family, somewhere they could enjoy, what they could do. And if I'm honest with you, I didn't want to be one of these players that sat there and waiting for, I'll get this, I'll get that. I could have sat there waiting. I waited to make my decision until the end of July. But after a month, people have been back at football. So I was like, this came up when we literally came here for 2 days. The family was happy, and that was the most important thing. And we haven't really looked back, to be honest with you. And the other main selling point for it as well, which is massive in Cyprus, people don't realise, if you finish in the top 4, you can play European games, and I've never played that. So that's always a chance as well. So we'll see.
Good to hear. And also, just staying on the topic of your family, Punch, how have they settled in? Has it taken a little while for them to get sort of acclimatized and used to the way of life out there, or do they take to it quite easily?
To be honest with you, generally, I'd probably say on the pitch was a bit slow for me to settle, but I think off the pitch, they settled quicker than me. They were just like straight into it. You got to think it's like a holiday for them. For me, every day you live in the sun, you've got a swimming pool. The kids go to school, they finish school early, you've got loads of the day left. And for them, it's fantastic. It's obviously been hard in these times with the coronavirus, but everyone's going for it. And, we're in January here and it's still 22 degrees. I'm still in shorts and T-shirt.
Man.
Stop standing pipe, man. You're
You're
jumper shirts.
Yeah, so I can't complain.
And what have you done to adapt to the culture? Because obviously you lived in England, you're now in Cyprus. How difficult has it been to actually adapt to the culture over there?
Well, the thing is the pros and cons to it. The pros of it is there's a lot of English people that live here. So predominantly you find areas where English people live, and then obviously like where Cypriots live and stuff like that. So that's been quite easy. The downside of that is for me is obviously going to a different country. You want to hear maybe a different language a bit more often. I only really hear that by some of the people that work at the football club, because at our football club, we've got players from Spain, Brazil, Argentina, we've got Russian, Ukrainian, we've got Swedish, we've got Finnish, we've got players from all different countries. There's not one set of players. So in our dressing room, we speak English.
So do you think that's kind of almost like the Premier League? Because now you go into a club in the Premier League, you see 15 different cultures. So is it almost like the same environment in Cyprus as it is in the Premier League in terms of how many different languages people speak in the dressing room?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the one thing I look at is I've had foreign managers, but then when you come to England, when you're in England, everyone's English is very well spoken. So they'll have an assistant, his English is very well spoken, his message, just the culture, the way they go about it. I would love to look at it how maybe in England, the French boys or the Spanish boys, how they saw it, people speaking English, how they understood the message compared to what it's like here in Cyprus. Because you've got somebody that we've got a manager that's Ukrainian, he speaks English, but it's not that great. So his terminology is different. So they might get the message better than some other players. So I'd love to see it from a different perspective, how they did actually think about it.
100%. You know what, Punch? Another question I've always wanted to know for like players that have been born and bred in England and travelled abroad is what the climate does in terms of how it affects your training. Like, is it more difficult to train in hotter climates versus slightly colder climates like you're used to over here? Or does that have any sort of impact on the way that you train and how you can train?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Cyprus is like, I came here last year, August, and I think it was 40 degrees. But the problem is in Cyprus, people don't realise it's 40 degrees, but it's the humidity. The humidity is like 85%. So literally, you could just run around for 10 minutes and you're sweating from socks all the way up. And that does obviously take some time to get used to. In the summer, we train in the evenings. It's too hot to train in the daytime. So that changes. But you do acclimatise. It does take some time. You do acclimatise, but it is harder than... I give Cyprus its credit. It's a harder league, a more competitive league than people think.
No, so yeah, Punch, yeah, we want to talk about your time in England, Crystal Palace, where you cemented yourself as basically a legend, you know, spending over a decade, putting in some top performances. As Budge mentioned, scoring in the FA Cup final. Now that the dust is settled, how would you assess your time at Palace?
Bittersweet, really. It was a dream come true to go back to a team that I've basically supported as a kid, lived on the road, followed it everywhere. There was times that I was supposed to go back there. But I think on the whole, ultimately, I think I gave everything, as everyone could see. I gave everything I possibly could, my heart and soul, to that football club. Disappointed in the way that I left, because for 2 years, as soon as Roy walked in the building after a week, he was like, "You're not going to play no more." And for somebody to make that decision without even really, okay, he'd seen me play via watching because he was the England manager, but to walk in a building and say that there's obviously hidden agendas for me. And I said that, and for me, that's the most disappointing, is the fact that I never really got a chance. If I got a chance, then I'd understand. But I'm a type of person that is, if you put a challenge to me, I'll come back fighting, and I was never really given that challenge or that chance. And that's why I took the chance to go to Huddersfield. And then at the time, really ever want to leave Palace in that way, but things happen and you move on, and it's probably been a good thing that I came here.
Obviously, we spoke to Jan, and he is in a similar situation at Everton, where he's been, frozen out by the hierarchy. How difficult is it as a professional footballer to keep quiet when the club's basically said, "Listen, Punch, you're not going to play anymore"?
It was a difficult situation for me because I was at that club for 6.5 years. And obviously it became your home. Like, everybody around the building, I was close with everyone around there. And then I wouldn't say hierarchy. For a manager to come in and say that, and then you're just lost, and you sit there and think, and then players are asking questions of why aren't you playing, or players are saying that you should be playing, and all those type of things, you got to deal with that. And it's hard to deal with. I think, especially in my situation with being so close to everybody there, that was hard to deal with. With Yannick as well, I feel it from a bit, because he's gone to a massive club, bundles of ability, had the injury. Whilst he had the injury, the manager that signed him left, comes back in and out, and then the football club makes a decision. The manager doesn't make a decision, and that's hard to take, because the manager may see little things and think, do you know what, I could actually use him. Might not start every game because they have got a strong squad. You've got to give them that, and the manager plays in a certain way, and I think Yannick will understand that. But I think it's when the decision's taken out of your hands, I think that's the hardest thing as a footballer to deal with. Somebody says to you, for me anyway, as a person, right, do you know what? You've got to compete against A, B, C, and D for a place in the team, but your chances there, it's down to you. Then I think that's the biggest carrot any footballer can have. But if you don't give them that option, there's nothing you can do. It's like you're being paid to do a job that you can't do.
But Punch, like, how is it? Because as fans, we're not privy to this information where, you know, the club hierarchy has said, listen, you're not going to play anymore. But as fans, we're like, oh, Punch, he's washed up. That's why he's not playing. Or Punch is not good enough to be at this level. So how is that dynamic? Do you think football needs to do more about this?
No, I think it's always going to be one of them things. This is the beautiful thing of our game. It is always opinions. And that's where, with Roy, I didn't agree with his opinion, but I took it because you have to in football. And always I just said to myself, right, every day I just need to just train as hard as I can to do what I can. And I took his opinion. And I think that is the beauty of football, is a manager will come in and somebody's, whatever they've done or haven't done, and keep playing somebody, and everybody in the building knows that player shouldn't be playing, or this player doesn't do this, but the manager still does. And that's where football's beauty, because it's a game of opinions. Like you're saying about the fans, some fans will turn around and say, oh, Yannick's not good enough for Everton, he's not this, he's not that, or Jason, he's not good enough for Palace, or he's this, or he's that. And is the why we all tune in to watch football, to have our opinion on what we believe is correct. But us as footballers sitting in the bubble, we're the ones that have to deal with it daily.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's a lot of football politics. But do you think you were almost used as a pawn? Because I know at the time you were captain, and sometimes managers come in and say, you know what, this is a strong character of a dressing room. I'm going to make an example out of him.
Maybe. I've still tried to put my finger on it to this day. I can't. And that's one of the things that bugs me. You know, I can't really put a finger to as to why. You know, and I can't go back on it. But it's one of them things that always daunts you. But what can you do? You just got to swallow it. Sometimes managers do. Sometimes managers come in and say, right, you know what? He's a big leader. Or sometimes managers come and say, right, we need to make big changes. If I felt like that was happening at Palace, then I'd understand and think, right, you know what, the managers come in, the club has said they need to make changes, they need to get rid of people that's been there for so long. But that wasn't the case, you know. So.
And Punch, can you take us back to that last time that you walked out on the pitch at Selhurst Park, and you were obviously saying your farewells in terms of what you were thinking, how you were feeling? I obviously watched that speech, and I was thinking, how on earth has this guy managed to keep his emotions in check in the way that you did and speak so clearly, knowing how much that club means to you, and obviously the area, like being a Croydon boy and being born and bred in you know, that neck of the woods. Like how was that for you?
I'll be honest, I didn't even really want to do it because I'm a proud man. I wanted to leave with my shirt on the pitch. And me and Danny Young are very close. He's the kit man there and he's player liaison. And it's weird because Danny kept on calling me and saying to me, because obviously the situation happened at Huddersfield where the new manager come in, so things happened there, and he was like, look, we're going to play all the young players because we're relegated now, XYZ. So I said, okay, fine. Then he's like, what you doing in the season? I said, to be fair, the last 2 weeks, they're saying that I don't need to come in, so I'm just going to get away. So, no, come and do this. And I was like, Danny, to be honest, I don't really want to do it because it was weird. Like, okay, I know I went on loan to Huddersfield, but nobody from the football club phoned me or just out of common courtesy, being there for so long, and said, right, look, you're not going to get offered a new contract, X, Y, Z. I found out I was leaving when Danny said to me, they want to say a farewell. So like all these, regardless, this is where I say to you, football's a bit cutthroat. Regardless of what you've done at a football club, it all gets washed away and forgotten about in a split second.
Yeah, but Punch, I remember when you left the club, there were all of these glossy statements from yourself, from Roy Hodgson, from Steve Parish. So all of this was basically just paving over the cracks. Yeah,
well, I don't really know. They had their opinion on certain things and behind the scenes, but I never knew them myself. And anyone at that football club knows I'm a stand-up person. I like to be told A and B. And if you say to me A and B, then fine. I've got no problem with that. But do you know what? The best thing that come out for me was sitting in front of players that I played with. The chairman, Steve Parish, was brilliant. Like, I'm not going to say anything bad about Roy. Roy, although he made his decision, he was still brilliant with me. He never really outcasted me or anything like that. He was still good with me. He had an opinion based on football, which is his opinion. And that was fine. And the most thing that was important, like I said, that final day, saying goodbye to everybody, the fans, you know, the players. And that was the most important thing for me to leave in. I left it in that way, the best way possible out of it. I would have loved to have left that football pitch and saying, right, this is my last game. I've played in my shirt. I've gave something and I'm leaving. And that would have been the best case for me. But that didn't happen that way. And it still gets me now, but you get on with it.
Yeah, so that Punch, you mentioned, obviously you went on loan to Huddersfield. I remember at the time there was a lot of stuff coming out about you and Jan Suet, that there was a fallout, that there was a bust up. I think it was against Newcastle away, I believe, or something like that. What actually happened?
This is the weird thing again, and I'm not just saying it because we're talking on an interview. Even if we was talking on the phone, I'd tell you, is I don't actually know what happened. That is, and I'm not bantering you. I'm not actually saying that I don't actually know what happened. That is the joke. When I went back into the office to ask him what's happened, he said to me, I want to bring you back in the group. And I said, for what though? What did I do? And he couldn't say to me. So I was like, this just don't make sense. So what have you made up your opinion about? So because, okay, you took me off at half time. I was fuming. I left I didn't leave the stadium. I left the dressing room and got on the bus. If it could have been that, you could have said to me, but I didn't know what it was. And it was just mentally, it was a difficult time for me after that because you got to think, I know in the back of my head, my contract's running out of Palace. I know I've took this chance to play football, to go and prove myself because that's me as a person. And it started off not on fire, but as soon as I played the first game for Huddersfield against Cardiff, I felt back to my old self. Played really well. I hadn't played consistently for so long. Then the next day, David Wagner gets sacked and a new guy comes in. This new guy comes in, he's never managed the first team before. You're in the Premier League. It's the best league in the world. You're seeing so many different characters that you don't know how to deal with. In the first month, he probably had, and I'm not lying to you, he had an argument with 24 players.
Wow.
Or some sort of more than a debate with players. You just, in the football, you just can't do that. So
Punch, do you feel like you've always had to prove yourself as a footballer in terms of like managers and, you know, clubs trying to say, listen, you're not playing? Do you always feel like you've had to work extra hard to prove yourself?
Yeah, I just feel that always I think even in football, even if you are in a comfortable position, I feel you still should always be trying to go on that pitch to show yourself. And that's your platform. That's the platform that you was given. That's the platform that you've earned. Stay earning it and keep trying to produce the best you can for as long as you can. And that's where I feel that in football, people always doubt you. Sometimes people within your own club will doubt you, but you still prove them wrong. But it is down to you. And like I said, I go back to that point. If you're given a platform, then you can perform on that platform. If you're not given it, then what can you do?
100%, man. 100%. You know what, Punch? I wanted to ask. I know, like, throughout your career, you scored some very, very important goals, right? And there's one in particular that comes to mind for me. Obviously, when you were cutting off the right channel, tucked in and buried at bottom left against Norwich. In terms of important goals in your career, would you say that is the most important goal that you've scored, or would you rank another goal higher? And if so, why?
Well, when I analyse it, that probably is the most important goal of my career because it's two things: on a personal and a team note, as my teammates, my players, and friends that was in the dressing room at the time. We was having we started off on fire. We was in 5th, and then Yannick got injured Christmas, and then we just went down. And then we started getting injuries, and I think it was 18 Premier League games or something we didn't win for. Then I got injured. I think I missed 6 games. And I came back from injury, and the first part of the season I played well, but I wasn't scoring or making assists like I used to. My role would kind of change in the team, but it was a bit. I was having an okay season up until the point I got injured, and then I come back and I was just like, it was like a fresh breath of air. You know, like when you feel like you needed that rest, although you'd been injured. And then to obviously score that goal in that game, and we was on the FA Cup run as well. So I think at that point, we might have been in we was in the semis at that Norwich game. We was in the semis already. And it was a massive game because Norwich was, I think at the time, they might have been 3 points behind us or 4 points, something like that, in going to that game. And when I say to you, it's probably one of the, that was tenser than the FA Cup final for me, that game in the stadium.
Wow.
Every single player on both teams was tense. Both sets of fans, both managers. It was crazy. It was weird.
Playing in those relegation scraps, how is it mentally? Because obviously you went to Huddersfield and, you know, from the outside looking in, it seems like, you know, negativity was rife in the camp. The mentality was down. So how do you sort of navigate those relegation battles?
It was difficult because that's why David brought me in for a bit of experience and stuff like that. But I quickly realised after a week of even being under David and then a week of him going that the place was beaten. It was already resigned that it was going to get relegated. There was a few things going on behind the scenes that entailed that as well. And I just thought to myself, these players don't really know. Like some of these players will never play Premier League football again. They don't really grasp the concept of how big the Premier League is and how big it is to stay in it. And you might be a player that's only played 8 times in that season, but you give something in those 8 games. Like I've always said, 1 Premier League game is worth 10 Championship games. If you can play 1 or 10 games in the Premier League, that's worth a full season in the Championship. That's how big the Premier League is, and people need to realise that. And that's why I feel that the football club in general, at Huddersfield, they didn't realise that. But I can't change nothing. It's football. And you know, I met some good people there. You know, it's a lovely place. They got lovely people that work for the football club around it. And you know what? There was some good characters in there.
I think Dean Hoyle, the owner, was, you know, someone that was held in high regard. I know a lot of people at the time were saying he had the best interests of the club, you know, at heart.
So Jason,
yeah, to be honest, I never really met Dean Hoyle, to be fair. I dealt with all the other people that worked in and around the football club, and they was brilliant. The people that worked behind the scenes that had been there for years, seen the football club grow, they was brilliant. The kitchen staff and all stuff like that, fantastic place, lovely people.
So obviously you're a seasoned pro, Punch, and you've been in the game a very, very long time. So what kind of things behind the scenes happen to indicate that a camp is fractured and there's no, you know, there's going to be no sort of fighting spirit? Because with Huddersfield, the way they went down with a bit of a whimper. There was no fighting spirit. So what kind of things happen behind the scenes?
Well, I don't know, because you look at Huddersfield, what they've done the season before, and you look at them. I remember we played them, Huddersfield, in the first season under Frank de Boer, and Huddersfield come up, they beat us 3-0 at home. And you saw fighting spirit even for the rest of that season. You saw that maybe like they don't have enough of the most ability in the Premier League, but they've got bundles of fighting spirit, togetherness. It looked like all the players that was coming on wanted to do something. And then you just go to a place and you just see there's so many little things around the training ground, in training, around the gym, timekeeping, just some little things that they add up when you get to the football pitch. And they're the difference of the Premier League, those little 1%ers of staying in it to going down.
Do you know what, Punchy? I wanted to ask you a question, and I wanted to throw it all the way back. So obviously we've been talking about your career recently and whatnot, but I wanted to go back to the old school days, the square, grey estate, Troy Road, yeah. And obviously you would in those times play football regularly after school and on Saturdays and whatnot. Back then, were there players that you played with that you think, you know what, if given the opportunity or if, you know, fortunes worked out better for them, that they could have absolutely gone ahead and made it professionally in the game?
There's bundles of kids I played with. Bundles of kids that I've played with from the age of 8, probably to the age of even now, that could have been players. And you just look at it and just think, like, you scratch your head sometimes and realise the amount of work that I've put into to get where I got to. But then you look at those players and think, where could they have been? Some of the players had injuries. Some of the players mentally didn't make it. And it's just, it's difficult to pinpoint, but then that's why I think what's so important nowadays is what the football clubs are trying to produce, and what they need to realise is the professional clubs is, as much as they're trying to create professional players, they're also trying to create human beings. And softening the blow for me when a player's getting released or how they've grown that player, I think that's the most important thing for players to bounce back. Because I think I would love to know the statistics of players getting released to players then going to another team. Like Eze is a prime example. I don't know the boy, but look at him. Oh, you're not this, you're not that, you're not this, you're not that. And then look at him now. And he hasn't let those setbacks push him back. He's let those setbacks say, okay, all right, I'm going to kick on now.
No, you're right.
No,
Go on, Dad. Yeah, so what I was going to say is that your career, you seem to be having sort of like an Indian summer. The older you get, the more mature you had and the consistency you found in your performances. When was that moment that the penny sort of dropped that you thought, you know what, okay, I'm a man now, I can be delivering consistent performances?
I think it's just, like I was saying to somebody the other day, talking to a player here actually, Rashawn Murphy's got bundles of ability, the boy. Bundles just needs to learn little things here and there. But I look at things as learning curves through all my career. And every place I went to, I learned. Like when I walked into Southampton, I was a brilliant footballer with the ball 1v1. But I didn't understand about keeping the ball. I did understand about keeping the ball, but playing in a certain way. And I learned so much from those players there. And you don't realise at the time. And after a while when I'm there, and I was realising, you know, I'm learning a lot. And I picked up so many things from players there. Massive football club. Then I went to Blackpool. And then you realise when you get there, you think, hold on a minute, you're in the Premier League. So you play against these players in the Premier League. You see them for what they are. Then you see the players in Blackpool. And I remember Lallana messaged me one time. He was like, oh, what's it like? And I was like, mate, to be honest with you, I'm not going to say it's easy, but with your ability, you'll realise that you'll step up to it, no problem. And then other players struggle with it. So I just look at all those things as learning curve. And then like, when I went to Palace, probably TP coming in, you're learning about winning games gritty. Not necessarily controlling games, dominating games, about winning games gritty, being nasty, horrible, taking fouls, making fouls. There's so many different things that's why I say I learned, and they just helped me keep growing and growing and growing as a person, as a footballer.
Wait, so Punch, would you say you didn't know that side of the game because of your upbringing, being a street footballer, playing in the cages, trying to dubs up man, trying to rip man, you get me, sending man to bed? Do you think that's how you saw football onto a very...
Well, no, to be honest, when we grew up in football, like at Wimbledon, when I grew up in the youth team, the manager just used to say, like, play wide, get the ball and run at them. Or when you get the ball, play a 1-2 with the number 9, go and get the ball and run again. We used to do possession games and stuff like that, but then emphasis wasn't like keep the ball and make the other team run. That wasn't emphasis, never, like when I grew up in football, from what I grew up in anyway. And then you go to Southampton and you realise that it was probably more so the club obviously was in League One, but it's a massive club. You're expected to dominate the game every game, home and away. You're expected to dominate the game. That's what you was expected to, like, straight away dominate every single game. And that's where it was probably the big culture change as well for me.
Yeah, obviously at Southampton, you played under Nigel Adkins, Mauricio Pochettino. Like, obviously he's gone to PSG. Working under him, could you tell that he'll go on to have this sort of career that he's having now? Because at the time, it was sort of like a left field appointment. People were wondering, like, who's this guy? Where's he coming from? So, like, how is he like to work under?
Which is brilliant. You always knew when you come in the building that he was going to go on to big and better. You knew that straight away. Just tactically, knew so many different things. I'll tell you what, though, you need 2 hearts for him and 2 sets of lungs. but you know it's all for a good cause. You know, and he's probably along the way, because when he first came in, he was stern, he was stubborn, his way, this way, all that. He's probably learned along his way as well, being at Tottenham for all those years. He had made a massive clear out, got all these players in, probably learnt of that. He's going to go to PSG now with massive players. And
so how do you think he'll manage those sort of players like Neymar and Mbappe? Because obviously you hear a lot of things that PSG sort of like, you know, the players run the dressing room. Do you think he's got that in him to sort of compromise and recognize that, listen, I'm going to have to, you know, sometimes, you know, be lenient and you know, compromise with the players?
I think it's going to be an interesting one because this is how you've got to look at it. PSG is a massive club. They want success. The owners want success. The players obviously want success because they're great players. But then the players want success in the best way that's possible for the team. Now, Poch has obviously he's got an identity the way he plays. It's very demanding. But then if his way works and they get success, because he's only signed an 18-month deal, so say that, for me, that signals that they want success straight away. So that signals they want success at the end of the season. They want Champions League, or they don't like the League One's not enough for them. They've done that how many times? They want Champions League minimum. I would say them getting to semi-finals or something like that this season, and then they'll probably assess it again in the summer. Now, from now till then, he's got to find a way to implement the way he wants, but also how he gets that message across to those players by keeping them on side. Because this is the bottom line: you got Neymar, £300 million player, Mbappe, 200 and something million pound player. You've got all the rest of the players that are World Cup winners and stuff like that. Pochettino or them as an owner, it is a no-brainer.
Of course.
In this current climate. You
know, as you mentioned, it's easier to sack the manager than to, obviously that's, top dollar in assets, so.
I want him to do successful because he's the bottom line is you have to look at him. I think he started at Espanyol when he was young. I think maybe 37 or something. He started as a manager, something like that.
Yeah.
And he's worked his way up and he's done it brilliant. The success what he done at Tottenham, he transformed that football club in terms of players. Okay, he had the backing in terms of they've built the infrastructure and everything, but what he done is the reason why somebody like Tottenham can acquire someone like Jose Mourinho, a manager of that caliber.
Yeah,
is what the success he had. So I think it's only right that he goes to a bigger team. And I want him to do well. And hopefully he does go there, win the Champions League, and proves himself at that level and shows the world that he can manage at the top teams. Because I think that's the problem with him. Well, not the problem with him. He likes to grow teams. PSG's already grown. Do you know, the only next step for him now is to go and win the Champions League and then say, right, I can win the Champions League, but now I want to start bringing through the young blood like he likes to. He's going to have to go and earn that. But I hope he does it, and I hope it goes well for him and his staff.
100%, man. You know what, Punch? I wanted to ask you about the topic of injuries. Now, obviously, I know throughout your long career, you will have suffered various different injuries and picked up knocks and so on and so forth here and there. But also throughout your career, you've fortunately been able to recover from a cruciate ligament injury. And what I wanted to know is, what is the recovery process like coming back from a cruciate ligament injury versus like another kind of like long-term injury, like let's say, for example, like a leg break or and whatnot? And the reason why I ask is because there's been so many occasions where we've seen certain players go out with that injury and come back and they've lost a yard or they're not quite the same. And so I've always wanted to understand, like, what is the difference and what's that process like for you?
It's hard mentally because you know that you're going to be out for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. But I think the most important thing is what people don't realize is when you're injured, that's, especially knees, that's the most important part, is the first 2-3 months of it, is getting your strength back, making sure you're building up all the muscles around it. I think that's the most important thing. And if you do that properly and have in your mind, I want to come back, but I need to do this properly and very thoroughly, there's no guarantee to say you're not going to lose a yard. Can't say that to anyone. You might lose something, but I think
so you see that yard, is it mental or physical?
You can physical. You look at somebody like, I know it's different, Michael Owen always hamstring injuries, but look at Michael Owen, he definitely lost, when you look at him from the World Cup coming back 2 years later, he definitely lost a yard in 2 years. And he was still only, 23 or something like that.
Yeah, but Punch, to play devil's advocate, look at Danny Ings, who's in the best form of his career, banging in goals every single week.
Yeah, but then you look at Danny Ings, he had 2 of them. And I will say this to you, the surgeon, I think it's, after you do your cruise ship, they say it's still not another 3 years before you're back to normal anyway. Now, I know when I done my knee, it took me, I didn't play regularly, so it was hard to judge, but in games, I didn't feel right probably until I went to Huddersfield, and that was a year later. You know, and but at Palace I wasn't playing, so I was training. I felt fine in training, stuff like that. Like at my knee, I'd done. So that's 3 years ago now. Actually, yeah, 3 years ago I'd done my knee now, and I still wake up now and have a stiff knee. Like if I sit down too long, I might get up and have a little bit of a stiff knee and things like that. But when I'm running around on the pitch and stuff like that, I'm fine. I don't feel it.
So what is it like? The older you are, the more difficult it is to recover, because a lot of people say once you're post 30, the recovery period is much more, difficult.
Yeah, generally it is. But then you look at people, if you look after your body and do the right things, you look at someone like Ebere Eze, I think is he 39, is he 40?
Yeah.
You look at Ronaldo, you look
different
at Sergio
guys,
Ramos.
different guys.
It has changed in the way if you look after your body, you'll be fine. Well, not fine, but you'll be better. And I think that's the most important thing people need to look at. Yeah.
So, Punch, before we move on to your time at Palace, I'm going to throw a tangent here and ask you to tell us one interesting story that you've never told before.
I think I know what's coming.
It's up to you to answer it how you want, Punch.
I'm waiting for you to spell it out.
No.
What he shits when he wants, he shits when he wants. Is it that one?
There's a bear walk in the woods.
What's that much?
There's a bear walk in the woods.
It's gone over my head.
Yeah, gone over my head.
Oh, you're too slow with it. Does a fish swim in water?
Yes.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah, that answers that then. So yeah, Punch, what we wanted to do, we wanted to talk about Crystal Palace here and now. Obviously, they've had a few acquisitions in the summer. You mentioned earlier, Ebere Eze, what a player. He's been on this platform and he's hit the ground running. What do you think it's going to take for Crystal Palace to move from that mid-table Prem team to a team challenging for Europe?
I'm not too sure. You try and put your finger on it. You look at, we finished 10th under Pardew, and the team that finished 10th then has not got nowhere near as much natural ability these players have got now. It's just finding the right balance of getting that all together and getting them there. And I think they required so much talent there. I think it is time they finish in the top 10. And I want to see that team finishing near them places, because you look at the players they've got there. Wilf, you've got Eze now, you've got Andros, you've got Sluppy. You've got so many array of players that's like pace, power, attacking players. For me, imagine Crystal Palace playing in the European game with all those players. I'm not saying they're big players, but they're very good Premier League players. I'm sure everyone, probably at least 13 of the teams in the Premier League, 14 of the teams in the Premier League would take Eze, would take Sluppy, would take Wilf, would probably take Andros. When they're on their form. So for me, I just look at those players and think, imagine them playing in Europe, and the fans back, and the Crystal Palace fans in the European game.
That Holmesdale end will be rocking, man.
And I think they're doing the right things behind the scenes, because they're building the new training ground, so that'll be good. The infrastructure and stuff like that. So I think it'll be good, and I think they have made this with Eze. He's a good player, man. Good player. I'd love to go. Well, one day when I go back and I watch training, I'll see him training. But good player.
What excites you about him?
It's just his elegance. Like you see Wilf, you watch him and you see, right, he's fast. When you watch Eze, you don't look at him and think he's fast. He's deceptively fast. He doesn't even look like he's running fast.
Yeah.
That goal he scored against Sheffield United is just different gravy. And then you see he's got that calmness on the ball and stuff like that. And to not being funny, to walk into a Premier League team of Crystal Palace's caliber and play when you're that type of player is not easy, because of the type of players they have. That some other players have come and struggled to get in the team, because you've got a Wilf, you've got Andros who can run up people, you've got a Sluppy who's got pace and power. So you've got 3 people already that pace, power and can dribble the ball. Now, what can I do different to those 3? well, Will's definitely top of that tree. What can I do different to Slippy? What can I do different to Andros? And Eze's just come in and just fitted straight in. And it's brilliant for Palace because you've got to look at it now as, I think, what's Eze, 23?
Yeah.
Yeah,
24?
22, 23, yeah.
Yeah.
He's young. Wolf's 28. So imagine, like, it's almost like that shade. You keep Eze, you keep hold of Wolf, they get into Europe. Wolf, if they go Europe, I'd love Wolf to stay there for the rest of his career because I think what would he achieve anywhere else if Palace go to Europe? If they don't, then it's different. But if they go to Europe and he stays there and they achieve that and Wolf stays there for the rest of his career, it's almost like as one big player's leaving, another one's still there coming. And Palace have searched for that for years.
Yeah, I've always said that Wilf is like the best player outside that top 6. I think he's very, very talented. But do you think he's going to get his wish to actually leave the club? Because he's made it clear that obviously he wants to go into pastures new and play in European competition. Do you think that's going to happen?
I think the bottom line is football's about numbers, and now he's giving you those numbers.
Yeah.
So people can say whatever they want about him now. Is before it was like, oh, well, his numbers ain't this, his numbers ain't that. Well, they're there now. So now is the time to see, for me, to people to put their money out. And look, I would never want him to leave Palace, you know, from a fan point of view and the legacy he could build there. But from a personal point of view, it's going to come a point as a footballer, you're going to look at it and think, I want to play European football. You can't begrudge the kid of that. And if they get to the end of the season, they're not near there, they don't look like it, and he keeps those numbers up, then somebody should come and buy him. If they don't, then he's just got to continue playing his football.
Punch, I'm a massive fan of Wilfried Zaha, and I've watched his career from the Championship all the way into the Premier League. But do you think sometimes maybe his theatrics after getting fouled has put potential suitors off, you know, making that big money signing on him?
I think so. I don't know. So many people look at so many different things in a player. And the only thing you can look at is if anybody's watched Wolf closely, you can see how much he's grown. Like I think I spent 5 seasons with Wolf, and each season I kept on seeing him grow. Consistently getting better, slowly but surely. And it's like this season, it's like all the pieces of the puzzle have come together. And for me, Wolf's just an emotional person like that when he's playing football. He's emotional, he's passionate, he wants to win. And you can say from the outside it's theatric, but that's Wolf. It's his character. And it's the same thing like I was saying to you before, is football's changed. It's not about being what football says you should be. Okay, we know there's within reason, but he has a character, he's a person, and ultimately he's an athlete on a football pitch doing his job. And that's what he's doing, and he's producing the goods. So for me, he's playing as a striker, he's scoring the goals and he's assisting, and that's what counts in the football.
So yeah, Punch, I wanted to ask you about Roy Hodgson. A lot of people outside the game say for Palace to progress to that next level, knocking on the door of Europe, they're probably going to need a change in style or even a change of manager. Do you think Roy Hodgson's got it within his makeup to like give these attacking players, like let them off the leash and do what they want to do in games?
I think it's a weird one because people always look at Roy as, I wouldn't say he's very defensive, and I'm not going to say he's ultra attacking. He's in between. He wants you to keep the ball and stuff like that. But you have to look at what he achieved in his career. He took Fulham to the Europa League final. So, okay, it was back then. So he knows how to do with talent. He's been the England manager. He's managed Inter Milan. So not in a bad way, Roy is not an idiot. So he's got the experience. It's just about him piecing the puzzles together to achieve that. And I think he probably knows that deep down. He's probably got a very good squad, talented squad. When you look at the other Premier League teams, like, don't take this in the wrong way. Put Southampton's team on paper and put Crystal Palace's team on paper and look where both of them are.
Yeah, fair.
You know?
Yeah, no.
Man, like if you go man for man, back to front.
What you think? I think Southampton are better than Palace, man for man.
No, I'm not saying, this is my point. I'm not saying Southampton are better than Palace for man. I'm saying when you look at the array of talent that both football clubs have got and the positions they're in, I want to see Crystal Palace. I'm not saying I want to see them at the top, but I want to see them doing a Southampton mode where they're nearly at that European stage. It's like Southampton, okay, they're up there now, It remains to be seen if they're going to be the end of the season. But that's what Palace should be doing.
Yes,
Mm.
100%.
Agreed
You
with
know,
that.
with
And I
that
think they have
talent
their
they've got.
moments as well. Sometimes you see Palace 4th or 5th, then they go and run to 4 games without a win. Then it's like Jekyll and Hyde almost. So they need to just find that consistency.
Yeah, definitely. When you like, I'll tell you now. All the big teams that used to come to Crystal Palace, they used to hate it.
It's a
Come and Selhurst
nasty
Park,
one.
hate
It's
it.
a nasty. It's a nasty
Hated
one.
it. Hated it. All of them. They used to hate it.
Yeah.
You know.
100%. I imagine that's still the case to some degree as well now.
Yeah. I hope
current
it's still
game,
like that,
yeah.
and that shows. You know, and it's difficult to judge the football now because I think I would have loved to have seen Eze this season with them Palace fans at the game because they'd be
They
singing
would have
his
loved
name,
him.
they'd be chanting. Do you know what I mean? And just little
Yeah.
things. There's so many little things because you look at it now. It's like I think that the world of football is struggling. Look at the Premier League now, where the points ratio from where first is to I think it's to 16th or something. It's crazy.
Crazy.
And people are saying it. I wouldn't say it's the worst array of talent. It's just the conditions that everybody's playing in. It's difficult.
100%. You know what, Punch? We've obviously spoken at length about your career and life on the field, but we've also got to make sure we chat about your life outside of the game and off the field. I know you've got loads of different interests away from the game. I wanted to ask you, how did you get into golf? And do you get much time to play out in Cyprus?
To be honest, I got into golf before 6 months before I come to Cyprus, and then more so here. I wish I'd have played it when I was younger. It's just find it very therapeutic, just nice and relaxed and chilled. And to be honest, I do wish I played it when I was younger. I do.
Yeah, like a lot of people always talk about golf, and I've always wondered why do people like it. So what's the features about golf that makes it such a great sport?
It's just nice, relaxing. Look, here I'm playing in the sun, so it's completely different. Playing in the sun, relax, nice and chilled, and it's good for social. You meet a lot of people. It's good for business, and there's many pros to it for me.
Have you thought of anything you want to do after you retire in terms of maybe business, going into being a pundit?
Well, at the present moment in time, I'm doing my coaching badges now. So just before I was online with you, I was doing some stuff on my coaching, which is my UEFA license.
Come on.
So I'm hoping to pass that by the end of the season, and then see where it takes me from there. I definitely still want to play another season next year. I feel fit, feel fine, and then I'll probably assess it from after that where I'm going. I'm not one of these people that gets hung up on, oh, you need to make sure you're ready to do this or you're ready to do that. That's just not me as a person. I sort of take my time with things in, and if I put my mind to something, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do that.
So your contract's up with Paphos in May. So what are you potentially looking to extend or maybe try another venture for another season?
Well, that's talks that are going on in the background, but at my age, I'm not really worried about that. I'm letting my feet do the talking. Everybody in Cyprus can see that, and I'll just assess it as and when I'm ready to, because I don't need to rush into anything. Like I'm not a 23-year-old kid. I'm 34, 35 in the summer, so I don't need to rush into anything. I let my feet do the talking, and as it gets close to the end of the season or the end of the season, then I'll decide as to what I want to do. It's all entirely down to me, really, a lot of it.
Punch, final question from me, and I'm bringing it back to the Premier League. I know you're a big fan of the Premier League and you're always watching, football matches. So at the current moment, who would you say is the best player in the Premier League, in your opinion, if you had to give one name?
For me, Harry Kane.
Okay.
At the present moment in time.
Okay.
Because I feel, I'll give my reason for that. I feel he's had to take on a new role this season. He's basically been asked to play a different position to what he's used to. And he's took that on, given as many goals and given as many assists.
Yeah. It's a joke.
It's just, it just shows you the character the character and the mentality of him, there's something very good ingrained in him. I remember Poch actually told me before, he said he's one of those players, he comes in, start of the season, right, I scored 29 last year, I want to score 30. I want to score as many goals as I did last year. He's always setting his self-targets, and you got to respect him for that.
Yeah, no doubting that he's the best striker in the Premier League at the current moment. Obviously, you're a midfielder. I wanted to ask you your top 5 midfielders in the Premier League. So this can be a number 6, a number 8, number 10. Who's the top
now
5
or
right now?
Oh. It's hard, ain't it? I'm gonna go Højbjerg, just because when I watch him, I love the way he passes the ball. He's always trying to break a line, and if you watch him, he never bobbles a ball into someone. It's a side foot pass. There's no spin on it. It's just firm. It's just firm straight into people's feet all the time. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes. That goes without saying. He's been fantastic since he's come to Man United, and to go to a club like that, and he's just basically set the stadium alight since he's been there. Difficult because I don't feel that what's the name, but it's hard not to put De Bruyne in there. It's impossible.
Yeah. That was the name I was waiting to hear.
De Bruyne. And I'm going to be a bit more biased as well, because if he was to go on current form, I wouldn't pick many Liverpool players. Do you understand what I mean? But I'm going to be a bit biased because I feel that this guy, since he's come to the Premier League, again, has been asked to do different things, but it's been fantastic since he's come here, and that's Fabinho for me. Since he's come here, he's been fantastic. He's played centre half, playing centre midfield. He's been doing so many different things, but they've been fantastic. And my last pick, interesting.
What about
so I've got 2 attacking. I've got 2 attacking, 2. I've got 2 attacking, 2 defensive. If I'm honest with you, I think Paul's a great talent. I just don't feel we've seen the Paul Pogba we saw at Juventus or we see in France. We've never seen that consistently. That's the only thing with me.
What about James Ward-Prowse? Where do you rank him?
I think Prowse is brilliant, great free kick taker, worked hard at his game, got a lot of energy. And that's, for me, a prime example of someone working really hard with a lesser ability than maybe people around him or players he's playing against, but then really maximising ability. So my final pick, it's a tough one, yeah. Because I've got 2 defensive, I've got 2 attacking.
2 attacking.
There's a lot of omissions from this team, you know. You got Thiago, obviously Pogba.
I would put Thiago in all day, but he's played 3 Premier League games. Unbelievable.
Jordan Henderson.
Yeah. It's difficult.
Kante at Chelsea, Declan Rice.
Yeah, but again, Kante's not been the Kante he was before. You know, I think Declan Rice is a good shout. I like him, to be fair. The only reason I'm not going to pick him because I'm not a defensive player. I've got 2 defensive. I'm going to. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pick Bernardo Silva.
Okay. When a great performance,
when he plays in that number 8 position, it's like a newborn David Silva for me.
I can hear that though.
He doesn't see the splitting passes Silva sees, but when you see him with the ball, he's elegant. And he's like 5'4". He's short. I'm short, and he's shorter than me. And I see this guy, and I think he's about the same height as Sterling.
But he can scrap. He puts himself about, you know.
He puts people on the floor.
You can't get the ball off him, and I'm just looking there thinking, wow, just different level. I think the AJ and Fury thing that's fantastic for the British people. I just think, like, for me, I know obviously Fury's getting a little bit older and other people are going to be waiting around, but if I was both of them, I'll be sitting there saying, you know what, let's wait till the fans are back. Let's have our fights in between. We know we're going to have it. Try not to take too many risks so we don't lose the belts. But I think even if they didn't have the belts, I think that fight is so massive. It's like, obviously the belts is a big thing and you'd love to see it, but I think for them, you want to see fans there for that.
Yeah,
and if that means it's got
about a 2-fight deal maybe one in Saudi Arabia, then one over here.
I think I don't think Saudi's the same. Okay, I know they're going to get more money. I think an all-British fight like that needs to be at Wembley or somewhere, Wembley, Old Trafford or something like that.
Yeah.
That needs to be where the British people, they can go, they can see it. That would be massive.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
It's been a pleasure, Punch.
Yeah.
No, I love for taking out the time, bro. Like, we're happy that we finally got this sorted and it didn't disappoint. You know, you're very open and we appreciate that, bro.
No worries, man. Appreciate it, man. Pleasure, man. It's nice to get on with you guys and keep doing the positive work that you're doing, man.
No, love for that, Jason.
Love.
100%, man. So we're going to call it a day there. Just a real quick reminder for you, all of you that are watching this on YouTube, please make sure you like, look down below, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. If you're not following us on Twitter yet, it's at podcast_TBG and on Instagram at pod_TBG. And you can listen to all of our audio interviews on Spotify as well. Just hit us up. And like we said, we've got big things coming. We did promise, and we're men of our words, and we're gonna keep it coming. Make sure you keep your eyes peeled. And until the next episode, over and out.
Peace.